Commander Alina Reyes stood at the helm of the Earth diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching as the crystalline spires of the Zoraxian capital emerged from the lavender clouds. After 15 years of deep space exploration and first contact missions, she thought she'd seen it all. But the Zoraxian civilization's architecture, geometric structures that seemed to defy physics, floating midair with no visible support, still took her breath away. "Final approach to Zoraxian High Port," announced Lieutenant Park from the navigation station. "They're transmitting docking coordinates now." Alina straightened her dress uniform, checking her reflection in a nearby display. At 42, she wore her years of experience in the silver streaks of her dark hair and the quiet confidence in her bearing. This was supposed to be a routine diplomatic mission, deliver Earth's response to the Zoraxian trade proposal and return home. Simple. The Concordia glided into its assigned berth with practiced precision. Through the viewport, Alina could see the welcoming party, tall, ethereal beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their most striking feature was their eyes, perfect spheres of swirling cosmic matter, as if someone had captured nebulae and placed them in their sockets. "Remember," Alina addressed her crew, "the Zoraxians value precision and protocol above all else. Follow their lead on all ceremonial matters." She'd studied their customs extensively during the journey. The irony of what was about to unfold would not be lost on her later. The airlock cycled, and Alina led her small delegation onto the station. The Zoraxian party was led by what appeared to be a younger male, though with their species, it was often hard to tell. His skin rippled with patterns of deep purple and gold, and he wore what looked like living metal that flowed around his form. "I am Vexther, first heir to the stellar throne," he announced in perfect English, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. "Welcome to Zorax Prime, Commander Reyes." Alina began the traditional Zoraxian greeting, raising her hand palm up as she'd been taught. But before she could complete the gesture, Vexther stepped forward with his hand extended in what appeared to be a human handshake. "I thought we might greet each other in your way," he said, eyes swirling with what she would later recognize as mischief, "to honor our growing alliance." It seemed like such a thoughtful gesture. Later, Alina would wonder if she should have been suspicious of a Zoraxian royal being so casual with protocol. But in that moment, she simply smiled and took his hand. The moment their hands clasped, a surge of energy pulsed through the station. Every Zoraxian in the room froze, their skin flashing in synchronized patterns of shock, and was that delight. Vexther's grip tightened, and his cosmic eyes blazed with triumph. "The bond is sealed," he announced, his voice carrying that strange harmonic again. "Commander Alina Reyes of Earth has accepted the claim of ascension." "I've what now?" Alina tried to withdraw her hand, but Vexther held firm. "By accepting my greeting in the manner of your people rather than ours, you have demonstrated the exact qualities our empire needs: independence, initiative, and the willingness to break with tradition." His skin rippled with patterns she couldn't read. "According to our most ancient laws, you have also accepted the position of imperial consort and future co-ruler of the Zoraxian Empire." Alina's diplomatic training warred with her desire to swear loudly in several languages. "There must be some mistake. On Earth, a handshake is just a greeting." "Ignorance of galactic law is no excuse," came a new voice, deep and resonant. The crowd parted to reveal an older Zoraxian whose skin shimmered with all the colors of a dying star. "I am Emperor Zarkax, and you, Commander Reyes, have just solved a rather pressing political problem for us." Alina's mind raced. The trade agreement, the casual violation of protocol, the too perfect timing, this had been a trap. "You planned this." "Of course." Vexther finally released her hand, but stayed close. "Our empire needs new blood, new perspectives. When we learned of your reputation for unconventional solutions to diplomatic crises, you became the perfect candidate." "I'm a diplomatic courier, not a ruler," Alina protested. "You are now both," Emperor Zarkax declared. "Unless, of course, you wish to withdraw your claim, though I should warn you, the traditional method of breaking an ascension bond involves ritual combat with a stellar leviathan." Alina looked at her crew, who stood frozen in horror, then back at the smirking heir who had so neatly trapped her. She thought of Earth, of the protection and advantages this alliance could bring. She also thought, briefly, of how satisfying it would be to wipe that smirk off Vexther's face. "What exactly does this position entail?" she asked carefully. "3 trials to prove your worth," Vexter explained. Success means you help lead our empire into a new age. Failure means... He gestured to a nearby window where massive creatures that looked like living galaxies swam through space. Well, stellar leviathans are always hungry. Alina squared her shoulders. She hadn't survived 15 years of first contact missions by backing down from challenges. When do we start? The Emperor's skin rippled with approval. The first trial begins now, Commander, or should I say, future Empress. As alarms began blaring throughout the station, and her would-be consort's skin began glowing with anticipation, Alina had just one thought. Diplomatic missions were never simple. The chamber Alina stood in defied conventional physics. Its walls seemed to be made of liquid starlight, shifting and flowing in patterns that made her eyes water. Around her, the Zoraxian court had gathered on floating platforms that orbited the central arena like moons around a planet. The first trial tests your adaptability, Emperor Zarkax announced from his hovering throne. You must navigate the maze of living stars. A holographic display materialized, showing a massive labyrinth floating in space. Its walls were made of pure stellar energy, constantly shifting and realigning. At its center floated what appeared to be a small sun. Within the heart of that stellar core lies the crown of first light, Vexter explained, his skin pulsing with what Alina was beginning to recognize as excitement. Retrieve it, and you pass the first trial. And if the walls touch me? Alina asked, already suspecting the answer. Instant vaporization, Vexter confirmed cheerfully. But you'll be provided with a shield generator. It can withstand one direct hit from the stellar walls. After that, he made a puffing gesture with his hands. Alina studied the maze. How exactly am I supposed to get there? I don't see any ships small enough to navigate those corridors. The Emperor's skin rippled with amusement. Ships? No, Commander, you'll be using this, he gestured, and a servant brought forward what looked like a surfboard made of living metal. A stellar skimmer, Vexter explained. It responds to thought and movement. The concepts are similar to your Earth surfing, I believe. Alina stared at him. You researched Earth sports too. I researched you, he replied, his cosmic eyes swirling. 15 years ago, before joining the diplomatic corps, you were a semi-professional surfer in California. Of course he knew that. This whole thing had been planned down to the smallest detail. Alina grabbed the skimmer, trying to ignore how it hummed in response to her touch. Any other surprises I should know about? Just one, Vexter's skin darkened to a deep purple. The maze is haunted by solar spirits. They don't like intruders. Before Alina could demand clarification, a portal opened in the chamber floor. Through it, she could see the maze waiting below, its walls of stellar fire casting everything in a harsh golden light. Your shield generator will activate automatically when you enter the maze, the Emperor said. You have 1 Earth hour to retrieve the crown. After that, the maze collapses. Alina stepped onto the skimmer, finding her balance as it hovered above the portal. The metal felt alive beneath her feet, responding to subtle shifts in her weight. Maybe this wouldn't be so different from surfing after all. Just replace water with space, waves with walls of stellar fire, and sharks with whatever solar spirits were. One last thing, Vexter called as she prepared to descend. The crown will only accept someone it deems worthy. It must be freely claimed, not taken by force or trickery. Alina looked at him sharply. Now that would have been useful information to have up front. His skin rippled with what might have been a shrug. Consider it incentive to solve the maze quickly. You'll need time to figure out how to convince the crown once you reach it. With a deep breath, Alina shifted her weight forward. The skimmer responded instantly, diving through the portal into the maze. The shield generator activated, surrounding her in a bubble of translucent energy. The maze was even more impressive up close. Walls of pure stellar fire rose hundreds of feet high, their surfaces rippling and flowing like liquid gold. The corridors were wide enough for the skimmer to maneuver, but not wide enough to feel comfortable with walls of instant death on either side. Alina quickly discovered that the skimmer responded to the slightest thought or movement. A shift of weight, a lean in any direction, even the intention to change direction was enough to make it react. Her years of surfing experience proved invaluable as she navigated the twisting corridors. The first solar spirit appeared 10 minutes into her run. It looked like a piece of the wall had come alive, taking the form of a vaguely humanoid shape made of living flame. It screamed, a sound like a solar flare, and hurled bolts of plasma at her. Elena reacted on instinct, treating the spirit like a wave. She rode the skimmer up the wall, using the spirit's own attack as a ramp to flip over its head. The maneuver would have been impossible in water, but in zero gravity, the skimmer responded perfectly. More spirits appeared as she penetrated deeper into the maze. She dodged, weaved, and sometimes tricked them into colliding with each other, their forms dissolving in spectacular explosions of light. The walls began shifting more frequently, corridors closing and opening at random. Elena was forced to make split-second decisions, sometimes flying through gaps moments before they sealed. Her shield flared twice as near misses grazed it, leaving it weakened but intact. Finally, after what felt like hours but must have been less than 40 minutes, she reached the center chamber. The miniature sun floated before her, its surface roiling with magnetic storms. Within its corona, she could see something glinting, the crown of first light. But between her and the crown hovered what could only be described as a star-given consciousness. Its surface formed patterns that looked almost like a face, and when it spoke, its voice was like the song of solar winds. "Why do you seek the crown?" it boomed. Elena considered her words carefully. This, she realized, was the real test, not the maze, not the spirits, but this moment. "Not for power," she said finally. "Not for glory. I seek it because my people need the alliance it would bring, because two civilizations stand to benefit from the understanding it represents." The star being studied her for what felt like eternity. "Many have reached this place," it said. "All have spoken of power, of destiny, of divine right. None have spoken of understanding." The crown floated free of the solar corona, hovering before Elena. It was beautiful, a circlet of what appeared to be crystallized starlight, eternally shifting and flowing. "The crown accepts your claim," the being declared. "But remember, IT is not a symbol of power but of responsibility. Where IT well, SDARCHILD. As Elena's fingers closed around the crown, alarms blared. The maze was beginning to collapse. She threw the crown around her neck, jumped on the skimmer, and began the race back through the disintegrating labyrinth. She burst through the exit portal seconds before it closed, skimmer smoking, shield almost depleted, but crown secured. She landed before the Emperor's throne, trying to look more dignified than she felt. "Impressive," Vexter said, his skin glowing with patterns she was starting to recognize as pride. "Most candidates don't survive the maze, let alone convince the Guardian to release the crown." "The maze wasn't the real test, was it?" Elena asked, still catching her breath. "No," the Emperor confirmed. "The maze tested your skill, the Guardian tested your heart." He studied the crown, which had begun to pulse in sync with Elena's heartbeat. "And it seems to have found you worthy." Elena touched the crown, feeling its warm pulse against her skin. "What happens now?" Vexter's skin darkened ominously. Now we prepare you for the second trial, and compared to what's coming, the maze was merely a warm-up." Looking at his expression, Elena believed him. She had a feeling she was going to miss the relative simplicity of dodging walls of stellar fire. Elena couldn't sleep. The crown of first light pulsed softly on its pedestal beside her bed, its rhythmic glow matching her heartbeat. Her quarters in the Zoraxian palace were luxurious beyond imagination. A suite of rooms where the walls shifted between solid matter and pure energy, where furniture grew from the floor at a thought, and where the ceiling was a real-time view of space above. But something felt wrong. The more she thought about her selection, the less it made sense. Why would an advanced empire like the Zoraxians risk their future leadership on what amounted to an elaborate practical joke? There had to be more to it. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, sitting up. Instead of the door opening, a section of wall simply ceased to exist. Lieutenant Park slipped through, looking nervous. "Commander, we need to talk." Elena gestured to a chair, which grew from the floor. "What have you found?" "I've been analyzing the data feeds we can access," Park said, sitting down. "There's something strange about the timing of your engagement. The Zoraxian royal family has been ruling for over 10,000 years. They've never needed outside blood before." "Go on." Park pulled out a data crystal. 3 months ago, their long-range sensors detected something at the edge of their space. Whatever it was, it caused every piece of Zoraxian technology to glitch simultaneously. For just a moment, their entire civilization went dark. Elena frowned, Some kind of electromagnetic pulse. That's what they claimed publicly, but I managed to decrypt some classified communications. Park's voice dropped to a whisper. Commander, they're scared. Whatever that pulse was, it carried a message, in ancient Zoraxian. Before Park could continue, the wall rippled and Vexter stepped through. His skin was cycling through dark, agitated patterns. Your officer is quite resourceful, Alina. Those files were heavily encrypted. Park jumped up, but Alina waved her back down. Were you going to tell me about the message? Yes, after the second trial. Vexter's skin settled into a deep blue. But perhaps it's better this way. You deserve to know what you're really fighting for. With a gesture, he created a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a massive object, like a geometric spider web made of dark energy, moving through space. We call them the Void Weavers. They were our greatest enemies during the first stellar age, before we learned to harness the power of stars. What do they want? Alina asked. To consume. Vexter's voice was grim. They feed on stellar energy. Entire systems go dark in their wake. We thought we'd driven them to extinction millennia ago, but the message proves otherwise. They're coming back, and they're heading for the most energy-rich target in this sector of space. Earth, Alina breathed. Our sun is younger than most in this region, more energetic. Precisely, but the message wasn't a threat, it was a warning from our own ancestors. Vexter's skin rippled with frustrated patterns. The Void Weavers can't be defeated by technology alone. The ancient texts speak of a power that combines stellar energy with something else, something our species lost long ago. Human intuition, Park said suddenly. That's why you chose Commander Reyes. You need a human perspective. Close, Vexter turned to Alina. We need someone who can merge both ways of thinking, Zoraxian power and human adaptability. The trials aren't just tests, they're preparation. With each one, the crown of first light is changing you, preparing you for what's coming. Alina touched the crown, feeling its warm pulse. Is that why it synchronizes with my heartbeat? It's rewriting your genetic structure, slowly making you compatible with Zoraxian energy manipulation. But it needs the right foundation, someone who can think beyond rigid patterns, who can see solutions where we see only problems. Why didn't you just tell me this from the start? Alina demanded. Would you have believed us, about ancient enemies returning from the void, about needing to become a hybrid being to save two civilizations? Vexter's skin flushed with patterns of regret. We needed you to prove yourself first, to show that you could handle what's coming. A new alarm suddenly blared through the palace. The view of space above them shifted, showing a massive distortion approaching the outer system. It seems we're out of time, Vexter said grimly. The Void Weavers sent that pulse to disable our early warning systems. They're already here. But I haven't completed the trials, Alina protested. The crown hasn't finished whatever it's doing to me. Then you'll have to complete them under fire. Vexter's skin took on the deep purple of battle readiness. The second trial was supposed to teach you to channel stellar energy. Now you'll have to learn during actual combat. Alina looked at the crown, then at the approaching threat displayed above them. What happens if I fail? Then both our worlds fall into darkness. Vexter held out his hand, not in the formal Zoraxian gesture, but in the human way. Are you ready to try anyway? Alina took his hand, feeling energy surge between them as the crown flared brightly. Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. His cosmic eyes swirled with intensity. That's what makes humans so remarkable. You choose to fight even when the odds are impossible. The palace shook as the first wave of Void Weavers entered the system. Alina could feel the crown responding, power building within her like a star about to go nova. Well then, she said, letting the energy flow through her for the first time, her skin beginning to shimmer with patterns of her own. Let's go make the impossible possible. As they rushed to the command center, Alina realized that the real trial wasn't about becoming Empress anymore. It was about becoming something entirely new. A bridge between two species, a weapon against the darkness, and possibly the last hope for two civilizations that had never needed each other more. The Zoraxian war room was unlike anything Alina had seen in her 15 years of space service. The entire chamber was a holographic projection of the star system, with commanders literally walking through planetary orbits as they directed their forces. The crown of first light burned against her skin, feeding her tactical information directly into her mind. Void Weaver forces approaching in 3 waves, announced the defense minister, his skin flickering with urgent patterns. Their energy absorption fields are already affecting our outer defensive grid. Alina studied the tactical display, watching as the geometric forms of the Void Weavers cut through space like dark scissors through silk. They're not just absorbing energy, she realized. They're corrupting it. Look at the pattern. She reached out, letting the crown guide her movements. Her fingers traced lines of force through the hologram, revealing a complex web of dark energy. They're turning our own defensive grid against us. Impossible, one of the admirals declared. Our stellar barriers are impenetrable. To conventional attacks, yes, Vexthor said, moving to stand beside Alina. But the Void Weavers don't attack, they transform. It's why our ancestors had such difficulty fighting them. A series of explosions lit up the tactical display. The outer defense platforms, massive satellites that harness stellar energy, were beginning to fail. But instead of going dark, they were turning into something else, their energy signature twisting into something that made Alina's newly enhanced senses recoil. They're building something, she said, using our own defenses as raw material. The crown pulsed harder, feeding her understanding. It's a stellar inverter. They're going to try to collapse the sun. The room erupted in chaos. Zoraxian commanders began issuing orders, their skin patterns flashing in what she now recognized as panic. But Alina's attention was drawn to a different part of the display. Wait, she called out. Look at their formation. They're not attacking randomly. She pointed to a specific pattern in their approach. These vectors, they're familiar. Vexthor's eyes swirled with sudden recognition. The maze, they're moving like the solar spirits in the trial maze. Exactly, Alina's mind raced. Your ancestors didn't just build the maze as a test, they built it as a training ground. The solar spirits were modeled on Void Weaver tactics. She turned to the Emperor. The crown isn't just changing me physically, it's giving me access to ancestral memory. Your people fought them before and they found a weakness. But the records were lost, the Emperor said. Not lost, Alina touched the crown. Encoded into the trials themselves. We've been looking at this wrong. We don't need to stop them from absorbing energy, she smiled. We need to give them more than they can handle. Understanding dawned in Vexthor's cosmic eyes. The stellar spirits in the maze, they destroyed each other when they collided. Because the energy patterns were incompatible, Alina confirmed. What if we created a feedback loop, feed them so much power that their absorption fields overload? It would require precise timing, the defense minister warned, and a massive amount of energy. Then it's a good thing you have someone who just learned to surf stellar waves, Alina said. She turned to Vexthor. I'll need a skimmer, a big one. You want to surf into a Void Weaver attack formation? His skin rippled with a mixture of admiration and concern. Not just surf. Alina's own skin was beginning to shimmer with Zoraxian patterns, the crown's changes accelerating under stress. I need you to teach me how to channel stellar energy, right now. The next hour was a crash course in Zoraxian energy manipulation. Vexthor showed her how to connect with the living metal of the skimmer, how to draw power from the crown, how to shape stellar energy with thought and will. It was like learning to surf, dance, and conduct an orchestra all at once. Finally, they stood in the launch bay. The diplomatic vessel Concordia had been retrofitted with Zoraxian tech, her crew working alongside alien engineers to prepare for the desperate plan. The timing has to be perfect, Alina told her combined human-Zoraxian strike team. When I give the signal, every solar collector in the system will fire at once, channeling through the Concordia's new stellar array. Lieutenant Park, you'll pilot her. What about you, Commander? Park asked. Alina mounted the combat skimmer, feeling it hum in response to her presence. I'm going to give our friends out there a surfing lesson they'll never forget. The launch bay opened to space. Before them, the Void Weaver fleet was visible to the naked eye, their dark geometries blotting out stars. The crown pulsed with power, and Alina felt the last changes click into place. Her skin now flowed with permanent Zoraxian patterns, her eyes holding a hint of cosmic fire. Alina, Vexthor called out, there's something you should know. The changes the crown is making. They're permanent. Even if we succeed, you'll never be fully human again. She looked back at him, managing a smile. Good thing I never was very good at being normal anyway. She turned to face the approaching enemy. Besides, humanity's greatest strength isn't our form, it's our ability to adapt to change to become more than we were. With that, she launched into space, riding a wave of stellar fire toward the darkness. Behind her, the combined fleet of Earth and Zorax moved into position, preparing to execute her plan. The crown burned like a star against her skin, filling her with power and knowledge from ages past. The Void Weavers noticed her approach. Dark energy tendrils reached out, trying to corrupt her stellar wake. But Alina was ready. She bent the energy around her like a breaking wave, using their own absorption field as a surfing ramp. "Now," she commanded. The Concordia's stellar array lit up like a newborn sun. Every collector in the system fired at once, channeling their power through precise points Alina had calculated. The energy struck the Void Weaver's formation exactly where their absorption fields overlapped. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the darkness began to crack, lines of pure light spreading through the geometric forms like lightning through storm clouds. Alina surfed through the chaos, the crown guiding her movements as she wove the energy streams into a complex pattern. The Void Weavers tried to adapt, to absorb the overwhelming power. But they had never faced this combination before. Zoraxian stellar energy, guided by human intuition and creativity, delivered with the precision of a veteran surfer riding the perfect wave. Their formation began to collapse, dark energy transforming into pure light as their absorption fields overloaded. Alina felt the crown pulse one final time, completing her transformation just as her plan reached its crescendo. The explosion lit up the entire system, a nova of purified stellar energy that forced even the Zoraxian sensors to shut down. When the light faded, the Void Weavers were gone, leaving only scattered debris that quickly dissolved into harmless particles. Alina rode the final wave back to the Zoraxian fleet, her skin glowing with newfound power, the crown now permanently bonded to her being. She had succeeded in defending both worlds, but more importantly, she had proven that the greatest power came not from either civilization alone, but from what they could achieve together. As she landed in the launch bay, she knew the final trial still awaited. But now she understood its true purpose, not to test her worthiness to rule, but to prepare her for the role of bridging two civilizations that would need each other to face the challenges ahead. The victory celebration lasted 3 days, but Alina attended none of it. She stood instead in the Zoraxian ancestral vault, surrounded by millennia of history, studying her reflection in a wall of living crystal. Her transformation was complete now. Her skin shimmered with permanent luminescent patterns, and her eyes held the same cosmic fire as any Zoraxian. The crown of First Light was no longer just wearing it. It had become part of her, its crystalline structure merged with her very being. "The final trial awaits," Emperor Zarkax said, entering the vault, "though perhaps not the one we originally planned." "The Void Weavers aren't gone, are they?" Alina asked, not turning around. "No, you destroyed their vanguard, but our long-range sensors detect more approaching, many more." The Emperor's skin rippled with concern. "They will reach Earth first." "How long? 6 months, perhaps less." He moved to stand beside her. "The ancient texts speak of a final solution, a way to end their threat forever, but the price is high," Alina finished. She could feel it in the crown's pulse, in the ancestral memories it had given her. "That's the real final trial, isn't it? Not proving my worth to rule, but proving I'm willing to sacrifice everything to protect both worlds." "Yes," the Emperor's voice was heavy. "The stellar gate in the heart of our sun, the source of our power, the reason we can manipulate stellar energy, it can be transformed, turned into a weapon that would make every star in this sector of space toxic to the Void Weavers. But it would change the nature of the stars themselves," Alina said, the crown feeding her understanding. "Including Earth's sun, humanity would need to adapt to change as I have, or they couldn't survive the transformation. Now you understand why we needed you." Vexthor entered, his skin patterned somber. "Not just as a bridge between our peoples, but as proof that such adaptation is possible, that humans can survive the change." Alina finally turned from her reflection. "You're asking me to make this decision for all of humanity, to force an evolutionary leap on an entire species without their consent." "Yes," the Emperor's cosmic eyes swirled with sympathy. "It is an impossible choice. Save humanity by forcing them to become something more than human, or watch as the Void Weavers consume every star, ending all life in this sector." Alina walked to a window, watching the Zoraxian sun pulse with energy. The crown let her see it differently now, not just as a star, but as a living thing, a vast engine of creation that could be reshaped with sufficient will and understanding. "There has to be another way," she said. "If there is, we haven't found it in 10,000 years of searching," Vexthor replied. "The Void Weavers cannot be reasoned with or deterred. They consume until nothing remains." Alina touched the crown, feeling its warm pulse. Then she smiled. "What if we're looking at this wrong? You said I was chosen because humans think differently than Zoraxians, so let me think like a human about this." She turned back to them. "You see only two options: transform the stars or let them die, but there's a third way. Instead of changing the stars," her skin began to glow brighter, "we change ourselves, all of us together." Understanding dawned in Vexthor's eyes. "The crown, the changes it made to you, weren't just about making me compatible with Zoraxian energy," Alina confirmed. "They were about finding a perfect balance between human adaptability and Zoraxian power. What if we used the stellar gate not to change the stars, but to offer that same transformation to everyone? Give both our peoples the choice to evolve together." "It's never been attempted at such a scale," the Emperor said, but his skin was showing patterns of hope. "The energy requirements would be enormous." "Then we'll need help." Alina's smile widened. "How many of those solar spirits from the maze do you have?" The next month was a blur of preparation. Alina worked with both human and Zoraxian scientists, using her unique perspective to bridge their different approaches. The Concordia became a test bed for new hybrid technologies, combining Earth's practical engineering with Zoraxian stellar manipulation. When the day finally came, Alina stood on a platform suspended in the heart of the Zoraxian sun, surrounded by the massive energy collectors they'd constructed. The stellar gate pulsed beneath her, its ancient power responding to her presence. "The gate is ready," Vexthor reported through her neural link. "Energy levels at maximum. The solar spirits are in position." Alina looked out at the vast network they'd created. Hundreds of solar spirits, now understood to be semi-sentient energy constructs created by ancient Zoraxians, formed a living web around the sun. On planets and stations throughout both systems, millions of people waited for her signal. "This is Commander Alina Reyes," she broadcast to all channels, her voice carrying in both English and Zoraxian. "What we're attempting today isn't just about survival. It's about choice. About becoming more than we are, not because we're forced to, but because we choose to face the future together." She raised her hands, feeling the crown's power flow through her. "The transformation will be offered to all, but forced on none. Those who wish to remain as they are will be protected in shielded environments. Those who choose to change will help forge a new future, one where humanity's creativity and adaptability merges with Zoraxian wisdom and power." The stellar gate began to pulse faster as Alina channeled its energy through the crown. The solar spirits responded, their network lighting up like a constellation of new stars. Through their linked consciousness, Alina could feel the hopes and fears of both peoples, humans nervous about change, Zoraxians uncertain about sharing their power. "Let me show you what we can become," she said, and released the power she'd been gathering. The transformation swept through both systems like a wave of golden light. Those who had chosen to accept it felt the change begin, human skin beginning to shimmer with stellar patterns, Zoraxian minds opening to new ways of thinking. It wasn't a loss of identity, but an expansion of possibility. When it was done, Alina stood at the center of a new civilization, not human, not Zoraxian, but something gloriously in between. The crown pulsed with satisfaction, its purpose finally fulfilled. "Beautiful," Vexthor said, landing beside her on a skimmer. His own transformation had given him a new appreciation for human emotions. But will it be enough to stop the Void Weavers? Alina looked out at their changed people, at the hybrid fleet assembling to meet the coming threat. Ships piloted by crews who could now surf solar winds and shape stellar fire, guided by minds that combined human intuition with Zoraxian precision. "The Void Weavers expect to find two divided civilizations," she said. "Instead, they'll find one united people who can outthink and outmaneuver them. And if that's not enough," she grinned, her cosmic eyes sparkling with very human mischief, "well, I still have a few surfing tricks they haven't seen yet." As if in response, a new crown materialized above them, not a first light, but of unity, forged from the combined power of their transformed peoples. It settled onto their heads, linking them as equals, as partners, as the first rulers of a civilization that would reshape the very stars themselves. The final trial, it turned out, hadn't been about sacrifice at all. It had been about vision, about seeing past ancient divisions to a future where change meant not loss, but growth, where the best of both peoples could come together to create something greater than either could have achieved alone. And as the first reports of Void Weaver ships appeared at the edge of their space, Alina smiled. She had a feeling they were in for quite a surprise. After all, she wasn't just a human who had learned to ride stellar waves anymore. She was the dawn of something entirely new, and the darkness had better watch out.